we're totally away from that road. If somebody, remember here, I don't know, a few years ago, one of the liquor licenses, there was a road here in the rank road.
Oh, yeah.
Right, well, that's something that we.
Because that was our,
Right, but I don't think we.
Others or? No? Okay.
no, not that. Seems odd.
Yeah, it does. You know, I mean, this here too, it's got nothing to do with that, right? It had to do with building
Building
inspector.
inspector, yeah.
Jane.
I don't know if he's been down to have a look or.
Gives me time to think up a good one.
Yeah, I guess, first thing like that.
Question.
What's that good? Maybe it does, and there's just something like that.
I don't know.
No.
Put that down there and forget it, but, well. What time are you showing up?
Who follows up?
You should have seen the crowd of kids out there for hockey practice tonight. There's a bunch of them out there, the first time on the ice, and they was going out with the skate buddies there.
My Gemma was out there,
Right.
that's the best money I ever spent.
Yeah,
Oh, wow, yeah,
it was fun, it was
Yeah.
funny,
yeah.
going all over the place.
No challenge for her.
Just, yeah,
Till she got her skates on.
right, yeah. Some of them just as fearless.
Oh, yeah.
Just-
Okay, so at 5, 4. This regular council meeting of the Village of Bremen to order on October the 7th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. at the Bremen Community Center. And we have no pastor for it, but Councilor Turner will do that for us.
Dear God, we just pray tonight that you would give us guidance and direction on how to make the decisions that are best for our community and each member of it, dear God. And we just pray that you would give us the wisdom to see the way forward in each of these decisions. And we thank you for this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, council would like to welcome Councilor Worthen back. She appears to be in good health. It's nice to see your smiling face and your interest in our community. We would like to ask people, again, I've done this many times, not to litter and take pride in the beauty of our great village. Some people are removing village street signs, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Last spring, we had a fire at Southwest Southern Head Beach, and the fire department responded and they couldn't find the fire because the sign was missing. And also, the ambulances find it difficult to find a location if the sign is missing, so let's be more respectful of these signs. The federal election takes place on Monday, October the 21st. Let's exercise our right and vote for the candidate of our choice. Now I'd like to talk about a personal issue of mine. I went for my yearly appointment with my urologist. It was discovered after tests that I had prostate cancer. There are ways to correct this with radiology or surgery. I've had a bone scan and a SCAT scan, and I will be going to St. John on Friday, October the 11th, to find out which way we are going. Then we will decide what treatment to take. I plan to continue as mayor and as highway supervisor. In the future, I have chosen to tell my health issues because maybe times that I will be absent, and I will continue to try to make our island a better place to live, and also I work diligently on the aquatic center, and also to have our highways and our village streets resurfaced. Thank you. Number 4 is disclosure of conflict of interest. Number 5 is the adoption of minutes of September the 16th, 2019.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt the minutes of September 16th as per, as distributed.
You heard the motion by Deputy Mayor Mills. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Mr.
Seconded
Mayor.
by Councillor Fitzsimmons. Question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6 is the additions to the agenda. You're doing good. Number 7 is the RCMP report with Corporal McCann.
Good evening, Mayor Green and council members. Our stats went down a little bit in the month of September, but I think I gave you a warning last month that our POPAs and warnings kind of went up as a result. Those kind of balance each other out. If our calls for service are down, generally our tickets will go up because we have more free time available. So for criminal code offenses in the month of September 2019, we had 3 assault calls, 1 sexual assault or sexual interference, 3 criminal harassments, 1 theft of vehicle, 1 impaired driver, 1 theft over 5,000, 6 calls for service for mischief, 3 calls for service for uttering threats, 1 call for service for harassing communications, 2 calls for service for fail to comply with conditions of some kind, whether undertaking or cognizance, and 1 call for fraud less than or equal to $5,000. No stats for federal offenses, so that's our drug stats usually. 39 calls for service in the other category. Most of those entail police certificates, so criminal records check, which was taken care of by our DA. 6 false 911 calls, 3 calls for assist general public, 2 calls for assist other departments, 2 calls for crime prevention, 1 call for items lost and found, 2 calls for child welfare, 1 for provincial statutes, it's a trespass act call, 1 missing or request to locate, 4 mental health calls, 1 suspicious person call, 1 wildlife act call, and 2 explosive act investigations. Our provincial stats, there was 26 this month, 6 check stops, 18 POPAs or warnings. I believe this month most of them were POPAs as opposed to warnings. 1 call for a traffic violation, 1 call for other non-moving traffic, 4 motor vehicle collisions, 1 is a collision involving an injury, and 1 off-road vehicle collision. Councillor Sturgeon asked me a question last council meeting about the fines, and I didn't have an exact figure, so I figured I'd just, unfortunately he's not here tonight, but, so the fines he was asking me about speeding in a school zone, so they're doubled, so the regular fine is $172.50, so in a school zone it's actually $345, that's anywhere from 1 kilometer over to 24 kilometers over the speed limit. Then it kind of jumps from 25 to 49 kilometers over the speed limit, and in a school zone they'd be $585. And anything over 50 or 50 and over is actually $1,209. So I felt bad I didn't have the exact numbers, but I don't memorize the fines personally, so I always have my handy book with me.
I noticed there's other communities complaining about not getting the report the way we used to get it.
Yes.
I've been reading in the paper that there's, so probably there'll be enough outcry that we get it back.
I'm not sure, to be honest. So they have moved to a quarterly report, and that's what it's going to look like. It's quarterly stats, and I think they're going to entail a lot of the district that we police, not just Grand Manan. Would be like what they call the old RSC, so RSC 10, 11. So it'll be stats for everything. Now I do have the stats in front of me and just verbally go over them as opposed to an actual report. So I'm not sure what they'll do with in the future, but for now they're moving to a quarterly report. So.
Just do what you're told.
Sometimes, yes.
Any questions for the corporal?
Just on the explosive act, were those old flares again, or was it?
That's usually what it is, and that's classified in explosive acts. So I just have to look it up real quick, but that's usually what the explosive act is, because they fall. Unfortunately, even in our office, we have a bunch of old flares, and to get rid of them, it's very difficult, and they are considered explosives. So even for us, we have to take the dangerous goods ferry. And so that's why they call it dangerous goods arrest, because it is a form of explosives.
Any other questions for the corporal? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think probably there's one thing I should have spoke of, and that's Halloween coming up. So, would we expect the police to be out in full force? And for the drivers to be careful of the children that's out. A lot of them are out early. And there hasn't been that much going on in previous years, but it can be wind up again. Under 8 is old business, animal mobility lease, and that's for the tower at the Seal Cove Ball Diamond. Councillor Morris.
So we have a lease with MB with Bell Mobility for the cell phone tower down in Seal Cove, and we had deferred renewing that lease until they came to talk to us, which they finally did in September, after almost a year of asking for them to come. For those at the meeting was Councillor Turner, Councillor Cheney, myself, Mayor Green, and staff. Have I missed anybody? I don't think we learned anything startling, maybe is the best way to say that. It was not they're pretty good salespeople, I'll put it that way. I don't think that there's a real, or my take on it anyway, was that there is a real drive from the Bell position to have any increase in internet capacity here on the island. They seemed a little surprised that we were having even landline issues. That seemed to be a bit of a news flash to them. And so I would say for anybody who is, after you report it to Bell, it would be good if we could have a report in here as well to try to accumulate some of those reports, because they do seem to be spotty by times, but there does seem to be ongoing issues with the landlines. That being said, we had our meeting with them. I'm still a little hesitant to go forward with the lease based on the length of the term, because I think it locks us in for a longer period of time. But I also don't think we can afford to lose our cell phone tower down in Seal Cove either. So I would move that we accept the lease as presented to us for the 5-year term with the option for 3 5-year renewals.
You heard the motion by Councillor Morris. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question. Thing that gets me, I changed phones. I used to have a BlackBerry. Now I got a Samsung. And coming up from Seal Cove, I have about 3 dead areas, and one of them's right at the top of Dythers.
They did talk about at the meeting, it was sort of a passover type of thing, that there was going to be a requirement to increase the cell phone capacity or the cell phone tower system on the island. So hopefully that will mean a little bit of better cell phone coverage, but.
Okay, then, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Can we talk a little bit about the fiber op, where it's part of the moving with Bell?
Okay.
The big concern for them seemed to be the cost, not the lack of service. And they mentioned that there are opportunities to get funding from the federal government and the provincial government. And my take on that was that basically both of those things would have to be in play, or it's not going to happen. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah. So just because that was covered in the same meeting, I thought we should kind of mention where that stands. I think most people know that there will be fiber in the line that's across now, but it's a matter of having the equipment to hook it up to when it gets here, and to bring it from, what did they call it, the base station, out to the homes and all that. That's where the real cost comes into play. They are hoping that NB Power will allow them to use the fiber at no cost, as part of the province's contribution. But then you're looking at, if that's their in-kind contribution, how much money are they gonna contribute as well? But that's kind of where we ended up on that, but it was part of the discussion with Bill.
And they didn't seem overly optimistic, or maybe encouraging might be the word, that this was high on their list of priorities of going for grants as far as being able to install it,
Yeah.
at least in the near future.
That the money is available, but it wasn't necessarily gonna be worked that hard
They
to
had
be
other,
obtained.
they had other priorities, I think was the underlying message we had. So,
Well, I was told, I don't know whether anybody else was in there or not, they don't think there's a city east of Toronto, so pretty well leaves us out. When you're talking cities, and then we're talking the three islands probably with a population of 3,500 or 4,000, we don't mean too much, do we?
No, that's another part of the impression we got.
Okay then, we go to 8B2, 8.2, liquor license request for the sports zone, request for a letter from council. C.L. McPherson to speak.
Please bear with me, I have no hearing aids tonight, so if I ignore you, it's not by choice, I just don't hear you. So, works at home, so I hope it works here. I talked to the liquor commission. The zone has not made an application as yet. I handed out a handout that Connie dropped off. What the liquor commission said to me, and what Connie has said, is that they would like, the extension would be the deck, and I think the liquor commission calls that they call it a patio. Everything that goes on that they have license for in the bar can carry on the patio. In her schematic here, she said that they want to have things down in the back, horseshoe tournaments and that type of thing. That would have to be an incidental license, would come from the liquor commission, not from the village of Manan. If there was a motion to go ahead, not to oppose it, maybe just suggest that the at least liquor license be granted only to the patio.
So what's people's opinion? I notice on the graph that the back area out back is wants a license for that and the patio.
So we don't issue licenses or anything, no. So we're just,
My understanding was that they're looking for a letter of support from the council to go to the Liquor Control Act to get a license?
It has to be approved by
They
council.
they have to have it. If you fellows oppose it, they won't get the patio license.
But for the extra area, that, because it's an incidental one that has nothing to do with us, they
No,
would just go
that would have
directly
be-
to,
Yeah.
okay. And
We
we
have
have no
had
input on that.
These Summer in Festival,
Mhm.
North Ed, that's,
Okay.
I think they get it for 3 days for the duration of that.
So they want this for, say, the summer season.
I would think.
So don't everybody speak at once?
Our concerns might be to do with the noise and stuff that comes from
That's
this.
what I was about to come up with, is they have indicated a stage, an outdoor stage on this patio. We already have establishments with licensed deck and outdoor seating, but no stage and entertainment. Outdoor entertainment could become, on a regular basis, quite noisy in that neighborhood. Right now, we haven't had much trouble from them. I don't know if our friends across the street from them are having any trouble with them. So, I mean, other than the stage, I don't see a problem with it myself. But I do take issue to having an outdoor entertainment area with a license on a regular basis. I understand Rob says this rest of this area would be on a as applied for incident for a event. But if we license an outdoor deck with outdoor entertainment, I have an issue with it. I don't know about anybody else.
Does our bylaws have anything to do with sound levels type of deal?
Do we have a noise bylaw?
We do have a noise bylaw, and we have the noise bylaw is tied to a time limit.
Right.
10 o'clock at night.
Oh, sorry.
But then you must remember that the RCMP doesn't have to enforce our village bylaws,
No.
so. They will if it's to their advantage.
So who enforces that?
CAO.
He'd go down and he'd say, I didn't hear anything.
He'll leave his hearing aids on. What are you talking about?
Well, I'd just be concerned with the neighbors and stuff, like I don't think I'd want, something going on late at night, keeping me up, but if there was some way we could be sure that this deck isn't, too loud.
So we're either gonna have a motion to or not to, or table it again.
What are the grounds that are usable for denying something like this? I'm presuming there are guidelines as to what.
That's his job.
I don't raise my voice.
As I've understood it in the past, once there are establishments, similar establishments in the community, I didn't realize they had to have our approval to apply for licenses. I thought they were just looking for a letter of support to.
Are there some more?
Well, it's just that it's the patio, that's all.
Yeah, well, there's a patio licensed in Grand Harbor.
Right.
There's a patio licensed in North Head.
I don't have a problem with the patio license, but
No.
I can see the entertainment area being,
Right.
is there a way that we make a motion tonight
To support the patio.
to support the patio and leave that out? the
Well,
other
we
part
have to
out, or-
anyway, because the others left out, that would be the problems, but, yeah, in the motion, support the patio, but not the,
See, I didn't think that had anything to do with us when I first seen it. That's licensing and stuff. That didn't have anything to do with us anyway, where they're established.
Would it be worthwhile to, if they haven't applied for the license yet, would it be worthwhile to wait to see their actual application, just so that we're clear about what we are supporting versus which I know is sort of what we were hoping this diagram was, but I just think it's important that whatever we're supporting, we know exactly what it is. I don't know if that made sense, because you're looking at me funny.
And as far as the
The
building.
motion would be for the patio.
Mhm.
The incident down below, I don't think you can get that from the, that goes on and on, but you can get an incidental license, but that's from the liquor commission that handles that. And then anything about the more noise, and there's complaint logs launched with the liquor commission, their license is in jeopardy. But it's just not carte blanche that you can do whatever. They have certain standards that they have to meet.
And this has to pass like inspection and all of that as well.
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
it?
it's not,
Because based on this drawing, I can't imagine that they would pass. I mean, with a garbage shed right next to the patio where people would be eating, and the wheelchair ramp isn't probably anywhere near big enough proportionately to take you to a deck, because the guidelines are pretty rigid on those as well. So I think they'll have their work cut out for them as far as that goes, but I agree with Councillor Morse that I thought we would get more information as opposed to an illustration, I guess, of how it would be and what it would be, but because the noise just from people drinking outside can be pretty substantial, even if you didn't have that stage there. So, and it is definitely a residential area.
Well, if people want more information or whatever, I would think we'd have lots of time, or they would too, because I don't think they'd be building the patio from now till next summer. So
Oh, for sure.
she was offered a chance to speak with you tonight, but if that's your wish, table it until,
I would move that we table it until we receive more information.
and invite them to.
You heard the motion by Councillor Morse, do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Moses. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10-minute open session.
Mr. Mayor, if I may? Last weekend, or this past weekend, 3 councillors went to the Union of Municipalities in the Brunswick annual meeting. 2 there got scrolls of recognition, and it was my pleasure to accept on your behalf and to present you now with a scroll of recognition for 30 years.
Thank you very much.
And they only have pins that go to 20 years, so show 20 years on your pin.
Did you get another one to chop in half for me beside it?
I could do that.
They'll get another 20 in 10 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much. I do get enjoyment out of it, especially when we can accomplish something, and some people think I'm very gruff, but when I get to talk about this community center, I can feel tears coming lots of times now. Like Councillor Fitzsimmons was talking about the kids out there, I go back to the first skate that was there.
Right.
That was quite a thing. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So, delegation, special speakers, revised building law, Mike Park to speak to council.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, village staff, councillors, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you this evening. So it's something that I find or feel very important to our village now and moving forward. We have what I consider a ever-evolving building bylaw, building inspection process, etc., which I feel is moving towards a better system for the whole island. in my opinion, and I think a lot of the council's opinion, that system is put in place to protect the homeowner and buyers of future property, so they kind of have an idea of what they're getting. My concern is this exactly the way we should be going with this? Because the costs that are being incurred with this, I think, are a lot higher than anybody really imagined. And I'm not talking about the cost of our building inspector. I'm talking about the cost of building specifically. I built a home for somebody last year, right around, 450,000 or something like that. And I told him that if I had to build that house this year, it would have cost him between $40,000 and $60,000 more this year than it would have last year. If a young individual today came to me and just getting started, wanted to build a new starter home, gave me a piece of land, he says, I just want to build a 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom bungalow, maybe a 1-car garage on the end of it, they're looking at 300,000 plus today. And I don't know many people starting that can do that. They don't have to build new homes. They can get into buying an older one or whatever, but that has its own issues as well. And I have concerns with where this is going, per se. Just moving forward, especially with young people. What's going on is we have a national building code that's in place, that's being enforced. And there are several things in that building code which, there's a lot of good, but a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Just for a couple of examples, and I'm not going to ramble on with this very long, but if you're building something and you want to put on second clear cedar shingles, I've got them on my house, Councillor McPherson's got them on his, they're on half the houses on Graham and Ann, they've been there for 150 years. According to building code of Canada, you're not allowed to use second clear cedar shingles on your house. They're $22 a bundle. You are allowed to use what's called B quality cedar shingles, which are $68 a bundle. So automatically you've taken cedar shingles off the map, because who's going to pay that kind of money, $400 a square for cedar shingles, when you can get a nice fake rock or something like that for that. Another thing is, as part of the building code, you're required to put 1.5-inch styrofoam the whole way around your house, on every square inch of the outside of that house, as a thermal break, to get you the R value that's required by building code. Well, if you can imagine having 1.5-inch styrofoam all the way around the house, all your windows have to be built out that far. And if you were going to use these $68 bundle cedar shingles, I don't know what nail you're going to use that's going to go that far, that's not small enough, that's not going to blow the cedar shingle to pieces. So things like that, we got to make adaptations and then adjust the way we do things. But the thing that really burns me is that prefab housing does not go by the same building code. You can have a prefab home, a mini home brought to Graham and Ann. They have their own building code. They don't require styrofoam on the outside. They can be put on blocks and set there, which I can't do. I can't build for. And my issue isn't with the prefabs, it's with, well, if we're doing this to protect the homeowner, how come with somebody building it, we can protect them, but if it's a prefab coming in, well, we don't care about that. So my thing is, again, isn't about that necessarily. It's about, if we're out to protect the homeowner, and we're out to protect the buyer, and we're out to do what's best for everyone as a whole on Graham and Ann, maybe we can just look at a different way of doing it. And all I'm doing is promoting a little bit of discussion amongst council. Where you choose to go with this, that's up to you. What I'm kind of proposing to at least look at is you maintain the present building inspector with his stages of inspection that he has, which is prior to backfilling of the foundation, prior to drywall installation, and then a final inspection. That building inspector would come in at you get the same building permit, you have the building inspector come in at the same stages. But if he's building a house for Mark Ingersoll, okay, Mark's worked all his life, he's paid for his house, he sold it, wants to build a new one, doesn't even need to get a mortgage, he's put away enough. He'd like to be able to build the house he wants on his property the way he wants to, within reason. So he does the foundation, comes in, the building inspector looks at it, everything looks great, we move ahead, goes to the next stage of framing in, he says, well, that window needs to be a little bit bigger because of means of egress. You've got 2 ways out of the room, you need a 3rd way out of the room, however that is, that's a whole other issue. He wants to put cedar shingles on the outside of his house, well, that's not the code. Well, I'd really like to use them. So what I'd like to see is the building inspector do up his report still, and he writes that all down on a piece of paper. We live in an internet-driven world. That piece of paper can be attached to that piece of property till the end of time, just like a lien or anything else. Then when the final inspection comes, he's done his house, the building inspector comes in again, he says, okay, you've done this isn't quite right, this isn't quite right, this doesn't go to code. You need to fix these to bring these to code. And he says, you know what? I'm gonna live in this house till the day I die. I can't afford to do those things, so I'm gonna do it. Thank you very much, but this is the way I've chosen to do it. And as long as they're not dangerous or unreasonable things, he can do that. Now, he's been protected because he's been informed by the building inspector what's to be done to code and what should be done. It's attached to that piece of property, so when Bonnie comes along in 30 years and wants to buy that piece of property, she can go online, she can see that report, oh, well, this wasn't done. She can talk to whoever before she buys the house with her, and really not big issues. Okay, then now she's protected, now he's protected, but at the same time, he's been able to do what he'd like to do within reason on his piece of property. If I want to build a plywood deck in my dooryard and put a tarp over it with a plastic window in it and live in it, no, it's probably not ideal, but why can't I do that, right? And that's an extreme. But I just want to see that we're doing what's best for the island, but at the same time, we're not trying to turn into Toronto at the same time. Grand Manan is Grand Manan because it's Grand Manan. And there's been some bad things that have gone on in the past with construction and bad building and stuff like that, and I don't believe for a second that any builder has gone out and set to build this house badly and it's fallen down around them. I think probably Grand Manan builders have always been a little bit behind in the technology of how things have changed. The whole change from tar paper to house wrap to cedar shingles to cedar breather. The mainland went through all those same progressions and the same problems. We're just seeing them about 10 years later than they are. So things are changing, things are moving for the better all the time. I've changed this steel door in a prefab house 2-3 weeks ago, and it was all rotten underneath it because they didn't have to do it to the same code that we do. So I'm not looking for any, no, we're not doing this, this is the way it is. All I want to do is promote a little discussion that maybe in a meeting down the road amongst council, maybe you guys can just sit and look and say, you know what, maybe we can tweak this a little bit or make it a little better for Grand Manan. This isn't about me as a builder. I'm only going to be doing this for another 10-15 years. I've got enough good customers, I'm good. But there's some young individuals, some quality individuals that are coming along that want to get in this business. Chris Sutherland, Jacob Brownlee, Colin Urquhart, they're young builders that want to be doing this for the next 40 years. And if it keeps going the way it's going, nobody in their right mind is going to hire me to build a new house when they can get a prefab brought in for 60% of the cost that isn't built as well, but they don't have to play by the same rules. And there's going to be a time too, I hope it isn't, but there could be a time someday when the lobster fishery isn't hauling every young person off the island to go in the water. We're going to need these land-based jobs that, you know, it's going to be good to have a few more carpentry businesses and a few more trades on the island that are providing jobs. So that's all I wanted to be able to say to you guys. And the reason I chose to speak here rather than the open session, if there was any questions or anything that you had specifically, that I'd be able to talk to you about that, but I'm not expecting any feedback, I guess, does that? Okay?
Well, you're 100% right on the reason, one of the reasons that we get into this was because of the homeowner changing. The younger people, we don't have to talk about them specifically, but we know a lot of them get into houses that cost them a lot of money. And what you stated here tonight is a great surprise to me.
About the separate building code?
Yeah. And also of the cost of the shingles and what you have to do. So I think that you've gave us a great opportunity to get together as a council and probably with our building inspector.
I've had these same discussions with him, and the information on the separate building code, he gave that to me specifically too, and some stuff that we've talked about. So, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think he's a smart man. He knows his stuff. He's, you know, hasn't been in it as long as some, whatever, but he knows the code, and if he doesn't know, he's not afraid to tell you that he's going to look into it and find out for you.
I talk to him pretty near every Wednesday when he's here. You know, it's just how things going. Is there any problems or anything? Any other councillors have something they want to add?
Mike, we've been led to believe that we're going to adopt a building bylaw. We have to go by the National Building Code, and that's it. What you're telling us, have you found evidence that this is actually a viable track? Is this
Can't say that. This is me brainstorming, trying to come up with something that works for Grand Manan, that protects everybody, but at the same time gives you, I mean, I'm a bit of a victim that I sit down at a coffee shop every morning and have breakfast with a lot of guys that have been around for a long time, and most of us are stubborn and stuck in our ways, but at the same time, we've been doing this all for a long time, and the mentality of I'm not going to be told what I'm going to do doesn't cut it anymore. I mean, you can't, that's not the way we operate. And when I say the cost of building gone up that much, it has gone up that much, and it isn't just to do with the building. It has to do with the health inspector and the septic, it has to do with the electrical inspector and the electrical, but it's just one more thing on top of the whole thing. We can't mess with the electrical bylaws, we can't mess with the health inspector. This is one thing that we can kind of do. But as far as that goes, I mean, we didn't have a building bylaw, right, before. I mean, not one to this extent where it was forced this way, right? So I don't know what you guys are legislated to do. I don't know if you were legislated to say you have to put a building bylaw in place and this is what it has to say. As somebody who sat there, a lot of things have changed from then to here. All I'm doing is making a suggestion on what I think is a possibility. And if you guys legally can't do that, then, I'd like to hear that back, so at least I say, well, I've said my piece and nothing else can happen.
A comment on the prefab modulars. We, wife and I have been talking, building new, downsizing for years. And about 3 years ago, we priced a modular from a company on the mainland. And we went back and priced nearly the same modular, actually a little smaller. And the price had gone up like 30-40%.
Is that right?
I mean, I know they're not, they don't build to the standard you just described, but what they have to put in the building code that they adhere to requires finished basements, finished lawns, the whole thing. And it's just, everything's out.
Yep, it is, and it's just the way things are going, and it's almost a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction because you have some situations that have been very bad, and a lot of people, everybody around here has heard of somebody near them that's had a bad incident with bad building, right? And the knee-jerk reaction is to, no, we can't have this happen anymore, this is what we're doing, we're putting this blanket set of rules across, and now we got it fixed. Well, everything that's been done over years, the cedar shingles over house wrap, and I don't want to get technical with you guys, but cedar shingles over house wrap was code for quite a while because they went away from the tar paper, but that wasn't because I couldn't breathe, so they put the house wrap on and the cedar shingles against that. Well, the reason why the tar paper worked is the water could get between the cedar shingles and the tar paper, it couldn't get through the tar paper. But as soon as they put the Tide-Power on, the house wrap, the water get down between the two, it could get through the house wrap, and that's what was rotting the houses out. So that's why they brought in this, everybody's heard about the cedar breather. They put that on, which is an airspace between the cedar shingles and the house wrap, so that if water gets behind the cedar shingles, it runs right through everything. So it's just a progression. And we're naive to think that the way it is today, it'll never change again. It will. It progresses. It's a different products come out, different trades come out. And I think that's a great thing. But I don't want to see us priced out of being able to exist. But property is hard to come by as it is in Grand Manan. Housing is hard to come across as it is. It'd be nice to know that people still have the opportunity to do what they wanted within reason, at a reasonable price, I guess. That's my thing.
Okay, go ahead.
When we spoke about the paper trail or the information trail, how it would follow the house, is that something that is in existence or would it have to be created?
All I can compare it to is on a financial end, that if I go to buy Roger's house and there's a lien on it by the bank, that's attached to that house. Okay. So it would require a database of some kind, probably within the village itself, attached to the property tax bill or whatever, and again, this is something that I've just been stewing about, and I want to be told why not, I guess, more than anything, that everything here requires a building permit now, right? So if there's a building permit, there's a record of that project being done. So if that's the case, and you can tell if the proper building permit was put there, if the proper electrical permit was put there, if the inspection was done, and the results of that inspection could be all part of the same thing. So I don't see it as being a big problem. But again, somebody could tell me otherwise, but that's...
So almost like a Carfax.
Just exactly like a Carfax for house, and maybe, Grand Manan could be a pioneer in this house fax thing that we're doing, house fox, whatever it is. Sorry, Roger.
I guess my concern, just hearing you talking, that would be, if you let him get away with the shingles, then somebody else is gonna want something else, slip by, and then they're gonna push it, right?
No, and my point is, it's not compliant with the code, what, if he wants to do the cedar shingles, okay? It's
Right.
not, I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
My point is, if he's attaching that to his property, let's compare, instead of cedar shingles, let's say he wants to put asbestos on it, okay, which we all know is wrong, okay? You can't, there's more to it behind that that's not gonna allow him to do that, but if he did, okay, if somehow we get through that and he put asbestos shingles on his house or whatever, and the inspector found it, and oh my gosh, it's attached there, he's never gonna be able to sell that house again, right? So, because it's, you won't be able to, nobody will buy it, no financial institution, and that's the other thing too, if you're getting a mortgage, it's a little bit different, because if you take out a mortgage to build a house, you're gonna be forced to go exclusively by the building code, right? So there's no getting around that. It has to do with a lot of cases of somebody who's building their own home, or building it as they go, or whatever it is, that just gives them a little bit more flexibility and not have to spend as much money on as much, what some people view unnecessary frills that are unnecessary. But you're right, people always try to push it, but that's why I'm not stepping away from the inspection process. And no matter how many things he does that doesn't line up with the building code, if that's documented there, as long as they're not safety issues, as long as they're documented there, then that's between him and whoever buys that house next. And everybody's informed, everybody's protected. That's my thing behind
Right.
this.
But the insurance company's gonna have something to say.
Again,
Yeah.
that's a risk that he's gonna run by not going by the building code.
Yeah.
That still gives him the freedom to do what he wants, but nobody's in the blind, nobody's in the dark, everybody's aware, and that's all I'm proposing.
My concern would be too with who enforces, who dictates that has to be written down somewhere. Like somebody's gonna have to, like there's gonna have to be either a bylaw or something that says any deviations from this code must be documented.
Well, like I said, when Manzer does his inspections, he's got copies of those. Like when he does the inspection, and if I went through this a while back, that I had a violation of the building code, and he did it up in a form, and they gave me a copy, and I presume he has a copy. So if he has a copy, I'm sure he's filing that somewhere. So wherever that's filed, they just have to take that the next step of that file has to be attached to something that is accessible to anyone who wants to buy that piece of property. And again, this isn't me saying, do this, right? I just want to promote some dialogue on this, that maybe this is a route we can go, or something along those lines. I'm not naive to think that this way or no other way. I just would like to think, is it possible that maybe we could do something a little bit better even than what we're doing now? Okay?
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Ten two is a presentation for Playground in Seal Cove. Susan Benson and Susan Valentine to present.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff. Thank you for having us here. You're going to get a double-barrel presentation. We're here to request that council approve a fenced playground on Seal Cove Beach. Seal Cove is the only village without a playground. There are a lot of kids in Seal Cove. We're speaking on behalf of a committee that was established during a cleanup on Seal Cove Beach. It was kind of a last-minute impromptu effort, but Alicia Pond is a member of that committee, Tammy Brown is, Emily Clinch is, Sarah and Taryn Ingalls are, Susan and Morton Benson and I am. We all wanted to be here tonight, but we couldn't all make it. I think I'm going to start by having Susan speak.
Well, actually, we weren't supposed to be here tonight. Morton and I were supposed to be away, so I wrote a letter because we weren't going to be here, but we had the pleasure of the 5 a.m. ferry this morning, so here we are. Anyway, so we just wanted to let the council know that, we've been part of this committee, but we feel very strongly about a playground in Seal Cove, and the committee has done a lot of the groundwork as far as locations and stuff, so the very questions are, why not here, here, here? We've done all that. We feel strongly that the Seal Cove Beach is really the best location. We've looked at ball diamonds and other people's properties in the middle of the village, and Anyway, so we have come up with the final consensus that the Seal Cove Beach, the parcel of land that's owned by the village, is the best location. I spoke with DFO, they looked at the location, they had no issue with it. Morton talked to Department of he talked to Natural Resources. And I think they physically looked at it as well. They had no issue with it. We also had, when they were putting the playground in the school, we had the Little Tykes people that did that come down and look at the area and see if it's even feasible, if it's a good place for a playground. They had no issue whatsoever, thought it was a great place for a playground. Talked a lot about equipment and time over and everything, so that was not an issue. So, I mean, basically we're just here for us to move forward. We've discussed with the fencing, we'll talk about again, and ground prep, and we've done as far as we can do without obviously the approval from the village, the council, some open discussion. But we're very much in favor of it. We will do what we can for fundraising, we just want to see it happen, so this is our next step.
So we've done our homework and we wanted you to know that. The grassed area that we're talking about is much bigger than you would think. Susan and I went and pasted off. The far tip, like the tip that's you go around the corner to get to the beach, the very end of it is owned by, which Blumenshire?
No, it's Saskatchewan people.
No, he's the far tip. Anyway,
I see.
the end of it is owned by the Blumishers and by a Saskatchewan couple. If you pace off from where the couple's land ends over to where Crystal and Frank's property begins, it's about 200 feet. I was really surprised, and it's about 50 feet wide. So there's plenty of room to put in, to keep a strip of beach grass, probably 6 or 8 feet wide, that would have a boulder wall behind it. That would be to prevent erosion. And with that there, and with a fence on the parking lot side, there's plenty of room to put in maybe 3 picnic tables and a climbing structure and a couple of swings.
And I will mention that we also I talked to the Saskatchewan couple who have that little piece that it would sit beside, and they're very much in favor of it. They had no problem at all having that beside. We wouldn't find an issue with them, I guess is what they're telling me.
And there's also, Crystal and Frank have no issue with it being there, and there's enough room that you could leave probably 30 feet of grass between the end of the playground and where Crystal and Russell's property begins, just so that they don't have kids under their noses. There's also enough room there for a permanent toilet, which is our next project. So what else we learned, and this was in the flyer that we sent to everybody in Seal Cove. We probably should have sent it to everybody in the island, but that didn't occur to us until later. We learned that we don't need an environmental assessment, so that's very helpful. We learned not just that the Little Tykes are upset it was a good location, we could even use the sand instead of having to buy 12 inches of pea gravel or wood chips. We could use the sand underneath the grass as the base for the climbing structures. We also learned that Little Tykes guarantees their steel frames for life, so corrosion from salt isn't going to be an issue. At least it wouldn't be our problem. It might be their problem. And as Susan said, DFO and DNR are both on site, and so is the community. Susan did a poll on Facebook asking people what they thought of a playground on Seal Cove Beach, and I think the final numbers were 135 in favor, and only 22 thought there shouldn't be a playground at all, or it should be somewhere else. So I think those are our points. We'd like you to consider them.
Well, the first thing you have to do is put a request into the village.
This is our request.
Well, you better put it in writing,
I can do that.
and then we'll go from there.
Does anyone have any questions?
We couldn't act on anything because nobody had officially asked the village.
Well, now we're officially asking.
Did Little Tykes put their corrosion guarantee in writing? Because what I know about saltwater exposure from the wharves, that's That's an unbelievable guarantee.
They haven't put it in writing yet, because this just came out in dialogue, but it would have to be in writing before we'd ever
Yeah.
sign a contract, before the village would ever sign a contract with them.
But it's in the equipment.
Do they do any wharf equipment? Because that would be really helpful if they did something like that.
So neither of the DFO or the other organization had any problem with taking up the beach grass?
No.
No.
No. And I talked to Dave Stevens from Silk Stevens about the need for an environmental assessment, and his firm is quite familiar with doing them when they have to be done, and he was the one that said, you don't need one there. And he knows the spot that we're talking about.
Are we sure that, I mean, this is a new piece of ground there, are we sure that this is village property?
We've got the PID numbers,
Right.
and we called the
Yep.
property office, and they confirmed that your land may have grown over time, but definitely the area that we're talking about is village property.
So the request we would be looking for is for the use of that property? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the request for the use of the property and all liability, the village be relieved of all liabilities. Because if the village, if it's in there on village property and some kid falls, the village is gonna be sued. Right?
Well,
You never heard a word I said.
there must be precedents for the kinds of requests or the kinds of assurances that you're looking for with the
There is all
Castalia playground
kinds,
and the one in
there is all
North
kinds
Head.
of things. If private people go in and do it, you can get away with it, and the village can't.
We're asking that the village build the playground. We're asking that the village put a playground in Seal Cove, so that there's one in Seal Cove like there is one in Castalia and North Head, and so we're not proposing to build the playground ourselves. As Susan said, we could help with fundraising, but this would be a village installation on village property, like it is in Castalia.
So just kind of, I think what the mayor and the rest of us are looking for is an official in writing document, probably with at least a accurate diagram, if not a survey of the area, to know exactly what we're looking for, what you expect of us, and what you think what you will provide.
We can certainly put in writing what we want the village to do. I don't think we're in a position to have a survey done though. I can tell you that the PID numbers are confirmed that it's village property, and Rob has confirmed that as well. But we can't have a survey done.
I said, no, I didn't mean that there had to be a survey. We looked at a diagram a few minutes ago that was quite rough. I'm thinking of something a little more detailed.
Okay, we can do that. And what else would we have to include in the request?
Price would be a good thing.
We can do that too.
Do you have a cost estimate now?
We've got, we were given some documents from the village last year about the climbing structures. And a climbing structure itself, just the things that tend to be the anchors of a playground, is about $27,000. That, I think, includes the installation, I think. I think that was true at the school, and I think that's true here. The fence that would run along, that would stop kids from running out into the parking lot, is about $7,400. The movement of the boulders and the building of the boulder wall to prevent erosion is about $5,500.
Doing mental math, so 40-ish.
Mhm.
So is it something like the Castalia one that you'd be interested in, or?
Something like that. That climbing
Along that
structure
line?
is for younger kids, and it would be nice to have one somewhere else on the island for older kids, but the cost is roughly the same.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the Castalia is specifically, I think, 5 and under or
Yeah,
something.
it's for the
and we were
younger
looking at
kids.
5 to 12.
Yeah.
Sort of like the school age-wise, and, but yeah, I
Would
guess
there
we
be
could-
fencing required, like, between the playground and the boulder wall?
I don't think so. In fact, the Little Tykes person told us that fencing actually isn't a requirement. We just thought it was common sense, given that there's a parking lot right there. So it's just a single line of fence that we're talking about. And the $7,400 figure came from me telling them it will be about 200 feet long, and it might not have to be that long.
Any other questions? Well, it's a good time if council decides to do it, because it is in the budget time, so.
Thank you.
So 11.1, harm reduction, Councillor Fitzsimmons to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Most of us are aware of the increase of needles showing up in different places on our own. And the Harm Reduction Committee for Grand Manan would like to propose a solution, or a first step anyway, to these used needles being found to our community. There's many concerns raised by members of the public regarding the problem. Currently, Sharpies are being found in public areas such as beaches, trails, parking lots, and playgrounds. It's a public health concern that can be mitigated through the implementation of and use of the community Sharpies disposal units. There are already, these are already being implemented in urban areas with great success. And if you see your piece of paper that I handed out, it talks about the goals for this, the specifications of the boxes, the cost of the boxes, and different places where these might be located. Of course, we'd work with the RCMP and different associations, Help Me Grand Manan, different groups to figure out just where these boxes should be put. These boxes would be checked on a regular basis, and the needles and that would be taken away in a way that they'd be disposed of in the proper way. We have with us tonight Danielle Wilkins. She's actually the one who's put all this together and everything. So if we have any questions, you can certainly ask her. These sharp boxes, they're going to be with a locking mechanism. There's replacement containers that go inside of these that are emptied on a regular basis. And we just think that if we had 6 of these in different various places on the island, with some education and stuff, and hopefully that this would help to alleviate the problems that we're having, that we're finding them on the beach and everything.
So one other thing for you people, at the council meeting, some of the locations suggested was the Seal Cove Wharf, Seal Cove Sand Beach, Anchorage Provincial Park, Ingalls Head Wharf, North Head Wharf, Stanley Beach, and the Castalia Baldine.
And we talked to the RCMP about these different places and stuff, and they have suggestions, and the people at Help Me Grand Manan have had suggestions about where to put them and how to place them.
So, sorry.
Go to it.
Okay, jumping in. So trying to keep in mind with choosing locations that are centralized, and but obviously putting them in a little bit of a discrete spot within these locations so that people can drop off these needles at any time of day or night. Typically people would like to do that anonymously, and as long as they're maintained regularly, having the plastic boxes that are actually inside of the metal sharps containers switched out regularly so that there's no overflowing needles or anything that would pose even more risk and counteracting what it is that we're actually trying to do, which is eliminate the risk to everyone. Eliminate having these needles being found on the beaches, walking trails. I picked, just suggested areas where there's a high flow of traffic or a lot of people, and also the places where people have complained about finding these sharps. So just trying to protect the public. And obviously education would be a big piece, and advertising that these boxes even exist. I know in St. John they have little business cards printed out that have the locations all over uptown where you can find these sharps boxes and they hand them out with their harm reduction kits, or, you know, they're much more established and have a huge database of clients that they serve, so they're able to get the information out. We would be starting that point, so we'd have to build from there, but education would be a big piece.
So adding this up, we're looking at about $12.56.
So that's based off 6 units.
Yep.
Just to start, I think that's a reasonable starting place. And there's 10 replacement sharps for $85 in lots of 10. We could start with just 2 to sort of see how much they're being used, how often are we switching them out, so that you don't end up with a bunch of replacement bins that you might not need. But I think that you'll find that they definitely will be used and out of the beaches and trails. And I've also recruited an actual small pool of volunteers out of the hospital colleagues, and just kind of setting up a schedule, but depending on how much we're finding that these bins are actually getting full and that we do need to change them out quite frequently, set up a schedule for who would be doing that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and then those bins would be brought to the hospital and shipped out with our sharps containers to go to the incinerator. And that's how they would actually be disposed.
Well, I think it's a good idea because of, you know, what you read on Facebook, when you do go on Facebook.
Well, it's a start, I mean.
It's
you know,
definitely a start.
You need the education to go with that.
Yes, and our harm reduction committee is quite new. We've only been around for about a year, but a lot of good work is being done, and this is just one program we'd like to start and see happen in our community.
Corporal, have you had any experience with those in the past?
In Moncton, there was a center that you drop off in, so it was a little bit run differently there, and it was central downtown, which seemed to work really great. I do find like central locations is generally better. You can drop it off discreetly. Myself, just being on the island for the amount that I do notice the wharfs to be bad. When you walk around the wharfs, just looking in the water there, to me that seems to be the worst spot that I notice, but generally I think centralized locations are best, right? Just, you can drop them off discreetly and no one notices, right? You're gonna get more use out of them that way, for sure.
For sure.
So I'd make a motion, Mr. Mayor, if we could, to buy these sharp boxes for the island to have and put up.
Locations to be determined.
Locations to be determined, yeah. We can talk it over with people involved around the street that know
For sure.
where they should be.
You heard the motion by Councillor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
There's just one other thing, if I could, Mr. Mayor. We have some people coming down from Avenue B and Recap on the 17th.
Yeah, so we've partnered with Recap St. John, the Research and Education Institute, and also that worked with at-risk populations, and also Avenue B, which previously was AIDS St. John. The program coordinator, Diane Kearns, and Kate Harland, she's an RN who works for Recap, are going to be coming on the 17th to do some naloxone training and a couple of other things that we've got planned, but we're hoping to possibly have an introduction to council, as they are going to be the main pillars with bringing a lot of these harm reduction services to the community. So it'd be a great opportunity for networking and just kind of finding out what they're all about and what services they'd like to see and brought over here on Grand Manan.
I thought if we could, it'd be a great chance to have a lunch time meeting with them. Provide some lunch for them and all that.
Being around 11, and we've got
Yeah.
things planned in the afternoon, but thought maybe over lunch if there was a possibility to have a...
If there's enough interest, stop in. We can talk about it.
But he heard lunch suddenly.
Yeah.
What was that date?
You talking to me?
17th. So we can talk about it and we'll get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Thanks for coming, Mike. Request for a donation, community haunted house, open for discussion.
I'd be kind of scared not to give them a donation. But we usually give out donations of this kind for, what is it? We have a limit for this, do we not?
200.
200?
And Mr. Mayor, they have actually gone and used our form.
Yes.
I think it's in there first.
No.
No? Well, I'll move we support this activity, community Halloween event for Haunted House. The two have requested $200.
You heard the motion by Deputy Mayor Moses. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it, Mr.
Seconded by
Mayor.
Councillor Fitzsimmons. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 11.3, erosion at Stanley Beach.
In your package is an up-to-date photo of Stanley Beach. The erosion is very substantial in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And there's not much left of the parking lot that's there. Right in the foreground is a riprap that Rotary Isle has put there, so they have a exit for first responders from Rotary Isle, and as a result, the high tide and southerly wind that comes in and washes around and even taking more of the parking lot out. The only way that we can try to avoid it right now is put riprap down, and with environmental, we have to do it from the shore. We can't put any machinery on the beach. So you'd have to go from there around. I've only talked to one person, John Stanley, and for him to do it into proper seed the big rocks and then put some in behind it, it's around $6,000 to $8,000.
But one thing, riprap will do nothing there.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it at all.
You have to put armor stone, and the first ones have to be keyed in.
Yeah, he's what do you call it? Yeah, keyed in. He mentioned that.
And the length of that distance, there's no way that you could do it for that amount of money. The one thing just to remind people, those orange things that are there, if you're up there and you see them under there, or down on the beach, it would be nice if a councillor would put it back, because it's nothing to the Department of Transportation, that's all village.
Yeah.
And if something happens there, it will be the village that is sued.